The Psychedelic Society of San Francisco is holding BIPOC entheogen integration circles. You mentioned people playing with dangerous ideologies due to the accidental consumption of ergot fungus. And now seems people are intentionally consuming entheogens and exploring these ideologies in depth. Any thoughts on this? Black, indigenous, and people of color.
Okay. I would say this could be very hopeful if you had something like a decent guide. But if you have psychotics...
Yeah, could we get Chloe to lead these?
Just anybody who yes, Chloe would be, the gold standard, but you just need somebody sane. Right. Anybody sane could contribute something, but you can't put psychotics in charge of guiding other people through some trip, or it's going to just amplify the nonsense. Yeah. So I guess, look, God,
that just, it sounds, if this is being led by the standard sort of equity and equity and diversity crew, I think they're going to prompt a lot of bad trips. I mean, that's not going to be a space in which people actually feel like they can let their brains wander and actually explore all the different sensory and physical stuff that's coming at them.
Yeah, I don't trust them. That doesn't mean I don't trust these people. I don't know who's going to be doing it, but I wouldn't trust.
And the Psychedelic Society of San Francisco is, I think, a longstanding and interesting society.
So it does dovetail with another point that I used to make frequently, which was that there is actually something tremendously disturbing about the fact that in some parts of the world, San Francisco being primary among them, entheogens are quasi-legal. And in other parts of the world...
decriminalized, not...
That's what I mean by quasi-legal. Yeah. But my basic point is, look, if the Silicon Valley crowd has access to mushrooms or ayahuasca or whatever, that's an advantage that is being preserved by the fact that those very same things might be prosecuted in a different neighborhood.
That's a privilege. It's easy to talk about crack versus powder cocaine being effectively having racially specific profile sentencing penalties, right? But this idea that
there's
basically
no upside to them.
Right. That's just nasty but obvious. But this sort of actually, do you even have access to this kind of thing? And also, just like I said, that's going to prompt a bunch of bad trips. Unless you're talking about microdosing, you need some serious time and space and the ability to have some control of your surroundings to get anywhere close to guaranteeing that you're not going to have a really terrible time on it.
Yeah, but beyond terrible time, the problem is that this is a mind-opening drug. Yeah. And because of that, it can be open for better or for worse. And what I would say is I do think everybody needs equal access, which means they need to be decriminalized to the same extent everywhere. And frankly, we're seeing a mind-numbing lack of creativity about social problems manifest in this movement. So could they use some shamanistic exploration? Sure, but it can't be just a reinforcement of the wrong ideas that we are all now being force-fed. That would be disastrous.
No, we've talked, I specifically have talked a lot about how I think that most of these people haven't been anywhere, they haven't traveled, they haven't actually explored the world. Well, that extends to metaphorical as well. Yep. They need to open their doors of perception somehow, and perhaps they can do it within their own brains, perhaps they can do it by traveling the world, perhaps they could do it both ways, but absent any such expansion of their very narrow model of what's right and what's okay, they're only going to get more ideological.
Yep. Now, there is one thing, again, I think the danger of botching this in the current environment is great, but there's one thing that entheogens will teach you that I think is actually a vital lesson to getting past this woke nonsense. Which is that your perception can absolutely lie to you, right? So, good advice for people experimenting with entheogens who don't have prior experience is you probably want to stay away from the mirror and you want to stay away from the phone. And that's because it can be very unsettling. An encounter on the phone, you're liable to do harm if the person on the other end doesn't know what you're up to and have experienced themselves. Somebody who did could handle it. But you're liable not to be able to navigate a phone call. And the mirror, watching, your face melt, right? That's not such an easy thing to handle.
Crawl away from the rest of you.
Right, exactly. On the other hand, wow, how useful is it to have evidence? What I think is my eyes just lied to me, because I know that didn't happen, right? I can verify that the skin is still on my face. Therefore, my eyes are not as reliable as I interpret them to be under normal circumstances.
Yeah. So what you're saying is basically it can be used as a skepticism enhancer.
If you're paying attention, it will cause you to understand that your perceptions can be anything up through an outright lie, and one that is not detectable on visual grounds.
Yep.
And so to the extent that we are facing something that seems an awful lot like psychosis, getting people to say, am I having a psychotic break? That would be a step in the right direction, because you might be having something that's a lot like one.